good to see me, isn't it?
Hi everyone! Hello. Can you give us like a little bit of a deeper
What's that, Leah?
Communicate to them. We want to entertain them. We want them to join us.
To be able to give a good performance, you have to be at least know how to empathize with this character.
Since si Ariana Grande as Shoshana.
In fairness, na caught off guard ako dito, guys.
Mayroon pang buhay. Kailangan natin persuasion charm.
With anyone who wants to go into theater for self-healing is that we have to address the elephant in the room.
Not just hard, but you should work smart also. That's a whole different podcast.
Theater will be back.
It will.
Yes, it will.
Let's rock, oh baby. My bed tonight and lights on. Candles up and play someone. And all Kelly Usher. Cause I'm breezy. Baby, do real good. Just maybe never had it this good.
You're watching Theater Mix.
All right, I think we're live. Yeah. Testing
hello,
1, 2, 3. What's up, Stan? What's up, everyone? Welcome, everyone, to our special episode. I guess let's start, Stan. No?
Yeah, let's.
Welcome everyone to all our viewers, listeners out there. We are Archer Mix, and this is Theater Mix, where we talk all about theater life, rocket life, and everything in between. I'll be your host tonight. My name is Clint, and with me,
I'm Kristen, and for today's episode, we will be joined by the one and only Playbuck, Denise Buckley. So this is a really exciting episode, guys.
Hey guys.
Yeah.
What's up? What's up, Denise?
Thanks for having me.
What's up? No problem. Thank you for accepting. Thank you. For a little intro, a little fun fact. We were all in the same college org, but we came in like different times. So it's actually funny because because we very different. Booking na ba ng age? Yeah, but we came in like all different times. It's funny because we all didn't actually meet when we were in college, kind of. No, I don't think so.
Knew each other with our mutuals.
Just madaming moots. Mutuals. Hello.
Dr. Marlon.
Yeah. Kumusta naman, Dennis? How is everything?
Okay naman. I'm doing good. I'm excited for this. Medyo kinakabahan ako. I hope I can deliver what you guys are looking for, but I'll try my best.
Don't
Yeah, okay
worry.
lang. Kasi I'm pretty sure you will deliver because tonight, guys, we are joined. This episode is very special because
Mm.
we are joined by alcohol.
Yes.
Ayun. So,
Cheers.
ayun, guys, just cheers and yeah,
Let's have a
ayun.
fun Saturday night, right?
Yeah, on a Saturday night. So, ayun. So for this episode, we're going to be
Mhm.
talking about movie
Movie
musicals.
musicals, yeah.
Yeah, newbie musicals and all that singing and dancing and just like the crossovers of how like musicals and like how it's been interpreted in film. And
Mm-hmm.
so Dennis has been like really active with like everything that's been about films, about like
Mm-hmm.
recently like about like the Oscars and everything, and just talking about Oscars and everything about just everything about like the films that come out and like everyone's like way of acting and how it's so different, especially because like the org that we've been in through was
It's
primarily with musical theater. So
true,
Yeah.
true.
Mhm.
yeah,
So it's really something na ano, really nice for today's podcast.
yeah.
Game.
Ayun.
I'm ready.
Game. All right. So,
Let
kunwaring walang naka-ready na questions. Wow.
kunwari hindi na si ano,
Yeah.
Kunwari, hindi rin
So,
ako nag-prepare.
spontaneous,
Spontaneous.
spontaneous kunwari. But like, so movie musicals, they've been sort of having this like comeback. I think
true.
one of the favorite musicals that I've recently liked was Tick Tick Boom.
Oh yeah.
How about you guys? What are your favorite movie musicals recently?
Well, ang dami kasi ngayon
Define
no?
reason. Define reason.
Mm.
For me,
20
21st century as a whole is a little
oh,
reason.
okay, so yeah, 21st century game.
For me,
Yeah.
it'll always be Chicago.
Chicago.
Oh,
2001.
yeah.
That was a pivotal moment for musicals in the 21st century. And that was the first musical to win Best Picture at the Oscars since 1960s Oliver. So that was a big
Wow.
moment.
They have
Okay.
receipts.
Yeah.
Plus,
Um,
nagkakaroon ng comeback yung mga ano ngayon, mga musicals,
Yeah.
nagkakaroon ng revival, especially
Mhm.
West Side Story, bagong-bago, nanalo din.
Mhm.
West Side
Yeah,
Story.
that's
I think because you said West Side Story, I also remembered what's that other Vanessa? What am I?
In the
What's that?
Heights.
In the
Right.
Heights.
In the Heights.
No, it's
In
not
the
in the
Heights.
Heights. It's Vanessa. Just kidding. Yeah, in the Heights. In the Heights. So there's just been like so much movie musicals coming out. What do you think is? Yeah, Legally Blonde. Just like what J actually the Legally Blonde. So we'll talk about Legally Blonde later and like movies similar to that nature. But
Yeah.
what do you think has like contributed or like caused this whole influx of like sudden movie musicals coming into the scene now in 2022, 2021?
In irony, I don't really think that musicals
Mm-mm.
was completely removed out of the picture. It's always been
Mm-mm.
existing throughout the
Mm-mm.
years. Nagkataon lang na this year we have so many, but it has always been a part of everyone's cinematic experiences. It's important also to root back to its history kung bakit siya nagsasurge ulit ngayon. And musicals way back in the 1930s has always been a movement of two things. First is the movement of the studio. Musicals were created when the sound was invented and we're steering away from the silent films, diba? So 1930s talaga yung dun talaga nag-surge because everyone was very innovative, everyone just explored the possibilities of what can sound do on films, and that's why musicals became a really big thing in the 1930s, in the 1940s, and in the 1950s until the 1960s. Pero naputol siya ng 70s. And I'll probably talk about that later. But yeah, and that was also a period of romanticism because a lot of people experience a very difficult time during that era. There was the Great Depression, there was World War II, so everyone just wanted to escape. and their escape
Mm.
is the very opposite of reality. Syempre noon, wala pa namang like mga superhero films, di ba? So they only
Mm-mm-mm.
escape through these romantic musicals like, Singing in the Rain and Shall We Dance and all that. So it's important to know that a trend emerges whenever a consumer wants something. So right now, I think musicals are starting to be lucrative in a way because we're in a pandemic, so
Mm.
um everyone wants to feel good, everyone wants to find joy, but at the same time, it's not as commercially successful as before. Because
Mm.
like right now, theaters are still struggling.
Mm.
Consumers are very wary on going to the theater just to watch a movie, let alone a musical.
Mm.
And also, yeah, ang dami ko na sinabi, sorry. Simple na yung question.
Go lang, go lang, go lang. No, but
Yeah.
I'm actually
Yeah,
curious.
yeah.
Like let's
Mm.
get
Mhm.
into it because you said
Okay.
like in 1960s nag-stop siya
Yeah.
yung ano. I mean, let's get into it. Why did it
Mhm.
stop in
Yeah, diba? So
1960s?
30s to 50s really was the golden age. Like everything was musical, and a lot of actors turned to musical to in order for them to be not to be typecast as
Mhm.
dramatic actors. They want to participate in the entire trending genre. And the
Mhm.
1960s proved that musicals are very lucrative. That was the decade of The Sound of Music, West Side Story, Funny Girl, Oliver, Mary Poppins, such commercially successful films, and that was the receipt that okay, musicals can make the box office, they can win awards,
Yeah.
and all that jazz. But in the 1970s, that was a transition when traditional filmmaking was sort of set aside, and the traditional music for musicals was no longer that commercially appealing because that was the rise of the rock and roll era, and that was the rise of the flower power, independent
Mm.
filmmaking. Um, that was also the collapse of the studio system because most of these musicals are from studios like RKO, Paramount,
Mm.
Columbia Pictures, and the 1970s they really veered away from the traditional cinema that people knew and loved back then. Even the style of the way they speak, diba? Kung mapapansin niyo,
Mm-mm.
classic films, they have a very theatrical element on the way they speak. That's
Yeah.
Oh
the
my
trend.
God, Johnny, what did I
Exactly.
do with you?
Exactly. That's a transatlantic accent, and that was a part of the romanticism movement, and it was very theater influence, and 1970s was just a complete opposite of what was established from the 30s to the 60s, and they veered towards realism. Everything should be raw and gritty, and just a
Mm.
style of filmmaking in general. Like people are tired of following these traditions and all, but
Mm-mm,
musicals still
mm-mm,
existed. Like we have Jesus Christ Superstar, Rocky,
mm.
Rocky, like
Rocky
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 Horror.
Horror.
Horror,
Yeah,
yeah.
Rocky Horror existed in the 70s, but even though they existed, they weren't as they were not, they're not really slammed, but they weren't critically loved back then.
Mm.
Rocky
They weren't
Horror
the
was
thing.
Rocky Horror
Was
was
like a cult thing na lang din.
it's a cult thing that garnered cult
Mm-mm.
Mm-mm.
following throughout the decades. But during that
Yeah.
time, they were like, we're sick of musicals. But
Mhm.
but it's still, it still picked up its own pace. Grease existed, and it
Yeah.
slowly transitioned to the 1980s. And Grease 2, not as good as the first one, but it did prove to be a demand from consumers.
Mm.
Yeah, it existed in the 80s with Footloose, and again in the 90s, which was a completely different era once again. It was the rise of the trend for animated films being musicals. Like it started with The Little Mermaid, Lion King,
Yeah.
Pocahontas. Yeah, that was the trend that the 90s created. So, and I think the musicals right now is still heavily
Mm.
influenced in the 90s. Like we have Frozen, Moana, these
Mm-mm.
animated films
Yeah.
that are
Mm-mm.
proven to be very lucrative. Like there's no way an animated film that is a musical will lose at the box office. And that's because of the establishment that 90s give to those films today. Yeah.
Oh.
Actually.
Oo, grabe.
Actually. Gabi.
Sorry, ang dami ko sinabi.
No, it's good because like
Pero,
we're learning. We're learning.
yeah. Grabe
That's
deep
it.
dive talaga sa history. And like, it all, it makes sense like how we
Mm-hmm.
consume our media right now, how we
Mm-mm.
love like Frozen, how little kids love Frozen now. It's
Yes.
how we used to love Little Mermaid dati, di ba?
Exactly. That is the
Yeah.
Little Mermaid of that generation today. Like during our
Mm.
time, I'm not sure how old are
Mm-mm.
you guys, but during my time, I had Lion King, I have Prince of Egypt, like all these animated musicals that really introduced
Mm-mm.
musicals to kids because it's accessible to kids. Like
Mm-mm.
kids that are 7 years old below, they can't watch Chicago, they can't watch these very edgy
Yeah.
Mm-mm.
musicals, so they
Mm-mm.
need a medium that's appropriate for them. So that's where Lion King, Pocahontas, Little Mermaid came into picture. So yeah.
Yeah.
Mm.
Like 7-year-olds can't watch Chicago. Meanwhile, me 7-year-old watching Titanic. The car scene.
Definitely.
Pero grabe, actually it's a great insight because like you mentioned that before like the acting on screen was very heavily influenced with like the theater way of acting, and then they turned into
Yes.
like realism.
Mhm.
And so we're kind of having this mishmash right now of like some star of like right now you have like theater acting is different from like film acting now, you know,
Yeah.
the arts like evolved. And so right now you have like some people tend to be like, you know, I tend to like transition like from theater they went on to film, or from film they went on to like musical theater. What are your thoughts on like certain like type of actors on certain transitions, like they started off with film and then they decided to like move on to like this because now because when you think about it, it's like musical acting, it would be different, and then you translate it differently in theater acting. So like let's say you
Mm.
have a pop star and then they suddenly
Mhm.
decide to like
Oh
become in a
yeah.
movie musical, like
Mhm.
what are your thoughts on that?
I think ultimately, my belief and my philosophy is that a film is a director's medium. So they will cast whoever they think is right for the role, regardless if she's a pop star or she's a theater actor or she's just a straight up actor who doesn't have any musical background but learned to sing. I
Mm-mm.
think it's up to the director, whoever is right for the role. Period. That's it. And
Mm.
but the greater side about that is whenever you cast a big name in a musical, it helps with the box office because right now,
Yeah.
even though there's a lot of musicals that was released in 2021, not a lot of them really earned money to say the least.
Mm.
In the Heights really, it wasn't just one of the box office bombs of 2021, but it was one of the biggest
Oh.
box office bombs in the entire 21st century. I think it only earned a quarter of its budget, which was a
Oh.
very
Mm.
it's a very unfortunate thing
Mm.
because most of
Mm.
Mm.
them are relatively unknown actors aside
Yeah.
from Lin-Manuel Miranda who just had a
Yeah.
cameo, but none of
Mm-mm.
them really are established names. Even
Mm-mm.
West Side Story technically bombed in the box office. But it was
Mm.
re-released when it was nominated for a lot of Oscars, and it was re-released for that season. That's why awards are very important. A lot of people say the awards don't matter or the Oscars don't matter, but these awards, the Oscars, they help with the box office. They help with the visibility
Yeah.
of the film, and ultimately, it helps with the like when a film earns money right now, it goes to show that okay, this genre earned a lot of money, so it means we can make a lot of films in this genre right now. So
Mm.
Mhm.
if a film fails, like if a musical fails, it means it goes to show that maybe a lot of people don't want to see musicals right now, so
Mm.
it'll be discontinued, unfortunately. So
Mm.
yeah, going back to your question, how do I feel about pop stars? I think it's great because it'll
Mm-mm.
attract a lot of fan base to watch these films. For example,
Mm-mm.
Ariana Grande in the upcoming musical
Wicked.
Wicked.
Mhm.
That'll be a guaranteed success. I feel like because she's a big name. A lot of people are curious to know how she'll transition from
Mhm.
singing in the music scene, from singing to acting. Although she did have a cameo in at Don't Look Up, but
Mm-mm.
it's not really a big role. But yeah, I really trust the director, and I know that the director knows what he'll be doing. It's John M. Chu,
Mhm.
I believe,
Mm-mm.
Wicked. So
Oh
yeah,
yeah.
John M. Chu did a great job in the Heights, and
Mm-mm.
Mhm.
Crazy Rich Asians. So he's a great director, and I'm sure he knows what he's doing.
Mm.
So yeah.
Gotcha. Yeah. So casting really can like make or break a
Oh,
Yeah.
film.
definitely.
Yeah.
Like think about it,
Almost
West Side
one.
Story. It's West Side Story. There's a big fan
Mm,
base. It's highly anticipated, but didn't do well at the box
mm,
office because honestly, most of the actors are unknown. And even
yeah.
though it's Steven Spielberg, we're at the time right now where where we can't gamble on discovering unknown names
Mhm.
Mm,
for the sake of discovering a star, because when we're trying to revive a genre, we need to check all the lists. It has to be good, it has to be well written, well directed, well casted, and ultimately it needs to have an audience. So
Needs to have
yeah.
an audience there.
Mhm.
mm. So like I think like one of the best ways if they wanted to was like to meet in the middle, like get the big pop star and then get the unknown with some certain role and then maybe
Yeah,
something pops out. Yeah.
and ultimately they need to have the skills to back it up. They can't just have a big name and then that's it. Like they need to have the skills and they need to
Okay.
be the right one for the role. Yeah. Mm.
Yeah,
Yeah.
definitely.
So Sir Ronald Daba from Connected with GMA, he does agree with everything
Hi.
you did say. So ayun, hello Sir Ronald. Yeah.
Oh.
Hello. Ayun. So I kind of so ayun we so the casting really does have a make or break. Do you, so I think with the certain magic, the certain like for example, let's I'm just gonna say it. Let's say
Mm-mm.
cats. Let's say cats. People
Okay.
love the musical, the live musical.
Mm-hmm.
The movie had big names. You have Taylor Swift. You have Jennifer.
Yep.
You know. Um. So what is it about how
Cats.
like
Why
like
it
how do you
failed?
yeah why would it fail?
Yeah.
I
What are
think
the factors? Yeah.
Cats in itself. I mean, there's a reason why it hasn't been adapted on film because I think it's a very risky material to be adapted on film. Not all
Mm-mm.
stage musicals really translate in the language of cinema because cinema as a language is very specific. Um, Also, I think what that's one thing. I think the other thing is that the director, Tom Hooper, directed Cats. Tom Hooper really doesn't
Mm-mm.
have a background on musicals. He directed The King's Speech
Mm,
and The Danish Girl.
Oh.
And that's it. Like he's a great dramatic director, but he really doesn't have that vision to create Cats. Cats is a big it's a big production that involves a lot of
Mm-mm.
risks in its storytelling. It's very um it's very euphoric, the way Cats is
yeah.
constructed, and someone who just has the Danish Girl and the King's Speech, even though he's an Oscar-winning director,
Yeah.
I don't think it
Mm-mm.
backs up to his skill on recreating Cats,
Mm-mm.
unfortunately. So yeah, so that's another factor. Like the casting helps. Like when you
Mhm.
look at the cast of Cats, like these are great actors. Like we have Dame Judi Dench.
Mm.
Like everyone's great. Like Rebel Wilson has great comedic timing. Like everyone's great,
Mhm.
but the director has to be good as well. So yeah,
Mm.
it was just the wrong director, and that's it. That's for Cats.
Yeah.
Mhm.
Okay. Okay. For
Actually,
cat.
diba, you mentioned Chicago is your all-time favorite movie musical,
Yeah.
right?
Mhm.
So, can you like expound why for you it's like the perfect one
Yeah.
or
Why
like
did why did why
favorite
did
one?
Chicago work?
I
Yeah.
Why
think
did it work?
I think because I was 11 years old probably when I saw that film, or 12 maybe in 2002. That was the first musical that I've really seen that involves big productions, elaborate design, great music, great characters, edgy narrative. Because
Mm-mm.
before that, like I was stuck with Prince of Egypt and Little Mermaid and Lion King, but
Mhm.
that was like the real deal, the first real deal musical that I've seen.
Mhm.
And at first, when I was like 12, I thought, okay, so it's the first human musical that I've seen. But eventually, as the years went by, I realized that Chicago really had the right balance of these fantasy sequences, interwoven into the reality of the characters, because when we watch Chicago, most of the musical numbers exist in the minds of the characters. Like Cell Block Tango existed in Roxy's imagination of what the murderesses in Cook County Jail were like. Um, her Roxy number was her fantasy imagination. Like these are all fantasy sequences, and I don't. It's very hard to pull that off. It can come across as tacky or very out there, very obscure, but I think Rob Marshall really was the perfect director to pull that off. Great casting. Renee Zellweger and Catherine Zeta-Jones as Roxy and Velma really killed it. And it was just the stars aligned with Chicago. It was released at the right moment at the right time when nothing was really expecting for a musical to come out. And yeah, and it stood the test of time. And just a fun fact: Chicago is one of those rare stage musicals to film that became even more successful than the original stage adaptation, because
Wow.
when you adapt a stage musical into film, you could only hope to match or to be as good as the stage musical. Like that's the only hope, but Chicago exceeded everything. And as a matter of fact, Chicago, the musical, even became more popular because of the film. Because no one really was talking about Chicago before the film. Like everyone was all about Les Mis or Sound of Music. 90s to the 2000s was Miss Saigon era, and no one really was talking about Chicago. But the film reintroduced the stage musical, to the audience. So that's a huge feat to be accomplished. Yeah.
Do you think the movie contributed to like it being the longest like running in Broadway, or
I think so. I mean, it definitely in terms of longevity, I think I'm not taking away the merit of the stage musical in itself, but it contributed to the extension of the audience wanting to see Chicago on stage and how is it different than the musical on film. So yeah, it really contributed to the longevity of the stage musical.
so are you saying that like there that's very it's more likely that it's really hard um to make the from the live adaptation translate, and get the magic on film? Is that the harder challenge than like from a film to a musical?
It's a hard challenge, but at the same time, I don't think filmmakers should be very precious about it. In my opinion, it's those are two completely different languages. The language on film is different, way different than the
Yeah.
language of theater. It's almost like I really hate it when people say the book is better than the film, because these are two very different languages, and that's my
Yeah.
pet peeve whenever people say, "Oh, the book is much better." Like, how can you put everything in a 2 hour film from a book that it's this thick? Like, it's impossible.
Yeah.
Like it's complete. Those are two completely different media generally. But
Mhm.
I mean, yeah.
I think the goal is to satisfy both existing fan base of the existing stage musical, but at the same time attract new people who haven't seen the musical, and be a new generation of fans. Mm.
Nice. I just remembered when you said the book and the film, because like, did you guys have a Twilight phase?
Yeah.
I
I
didn't.
think
I was a Harry Potter person, but yeah.
I were Harry Potter. I didn't like it like Twilight, but I remember like it was so mainstream, so I was like, I'm curious, like what is this? And then I remember like, comparing it, like there's like so many dialogue of like in the head what they're
yeah, yeah.
thinking, and then like in the film, like literally it's just like the person just staring like
They're just staring.
so you as
Okay.
a reader, you're like, that's what they're thinking.
Yeah.
But like how if a person who didn't read the book, it makes sense. It's a different language.
Yeah. It's
Yeah,
like
yeah.
comparing pizza with caldereta. Like it doesn't make any sense. It doesn't make any sense to compare. Like, ano mas masarap,
Someone's
caldereta or
expecting
pizza?
you to make a caldereta pizza.
I mean,
Why
you got
not?
this, you got bell pepper. Okay.
I mean, ayun.
Sorry.
So, Yeah, and so I think we cover that. Like, there's a lot of. What
Mm-mm.
about so we talked about mostly about like the live musicals turning into movies.
Movie
What
musical.
about like movies like because let's say Spider-Man or Legally Blonde, they turn to like
Oh
musical.
yeah.
Yeah. How do you think that translates? Do you think it's the same rule kind of goes where it's like the movie's better, but like
Then
the
the
musical, or
stage.
has there been like a moment where like the musical was better than the original film material?
I
Yeah,
mean,
and what are the
yeah, sorry,
sorry.
sorry. Go
And
ahead.
like, what are the advantages and disadvantages? Because
Ah.
from a movie to the stage, kailangan kasi may fan following, tapos gagawin
Mhm,
mo stage, di ba?
mhm. Well, to answer the first question, I think well, let me go back first to the second question because I think one of the advantages of a film is the luxury of editing.
Mm.
Because the editing of a film dictates the tone and the pacing, and
Mm-hmm.
there's a lot of luxury in post production. Like you can cut, edit, change the pacing, change this, change that. Wherein when on stage musicals, you literally like the audience is in front of you, right? So you can't cheat. Like you can make mistakes, they can see your flaws, they can see it all. But at the same time, there's also a downside with film musicals because once you do it, it's forever. Like it'll exist, and you'll
Mm.
if you're not satisfied with your performance, if you're an actor and you participated in a film musical, if you're not satisfied, that's it. Where when you're on stage, you can always redeem yourself one way or another with every depends on how long
Everybody.
the musical is running. Like you can always do it and change it up or change or how you approach the character and all that. But yeah, and that's exactly what Emma Stone said because Emma Stone did La La Land right after she did Cabaret. So going from Broadway to film, it was
Mm.
it was a very different experience for her. I think she mentioned that yeah, she's a tough critic of herself. That's exactly what she said. What I said that once you do a film, it's forever. Wherein when you do something like Cabaret, like she did, I think there was a moment in Cabaret, and she's very open about this that she did this very big number, and I forgot the song that Sally did. Um, but yeah, there's a big song number, and then when she did her moment, both of her contact lens popped out, and she couldn't see anything,
Oh.
and she went backstage crying and all that. But she can do it again the next day or the day
Mhm.
after that. So that is the advantage of stage. But at the same time, on stage, I mean, you guys are theater actors. I'm sure you can relate to this. You have to be self-reliant when you're doing stage musicals because
Mhm.
um the direction is upon the actor, the editing is upon the actor. There's no a director can't go middle of the scene and direct you. It's always gonna be in your memory, it's always gonna be your imagination. Of course there's text, there's always a script, there's always the rehearsal period, but at the end of the day, when you don't get the laughs from the audience that you're supposed to get, it ruins the entire tone, it ruins the entire energy. It's a very symbiotic relationship with the stage between the actors and the
The
audience. So
audience.
that is something that films don't have. And
Mm-hmm.
yeah, so there's always an upside and downside with both films and musicals. Sorry,
Gotcha,
Clint,
gotcha.
what was your first question? Ang dami
I
ko sinabi.
forgot.
Forgot.
You were in the moment.
Sorry. I'll try
So
to remember
no,
it.
I think you answered it. Whatever I said, I've.
Mm.
I think you answered that. But like
Oh,
I think
from
I yeah
films to turning
yeah
into
like
musicals,
From
right?
what
movies to
top of my
musicals,
mind is
yeah.
like let's say Legally Blonde or Mean
Okay.
Girls, for
Mean Girls.
Mm,
example. And
yeah.
then,
Mhm.
yeah, Mean Girls, because we're wearing pink today.
True.
I think it's fine. I'm not really precious about it. Nothing is too sacred to be untouched. Like Mean Girls is too precious. It can't be adapted into something else. I think it's great that it can find a different type of audience. It's great for theater actors to have a lot of material, because I think there's also an economic controversy when it comes to theater actors, that they don't have, or there's only too many parts they can audition for. So whenever a film is adapted into, when a film musical is adapted, or just a straight film in general, it's adapted into a musical and stage musical, there's a lot of auditions for them, which means a lot of work for them, which means they're not unemployed. So because there's a lot of controversies with Broadway actors, that it's very hard to get a job, especially when a very with a very competitive industry such as the Broadway or stage musicals in New York and all of that. When there's a lot of material for them, it means more jobs for them. So I don't think it's a bad thing at all. I can't see it being a negative thing, other than people gatekeeping these films to be adapted into a musical.
Gotcha.
Yeah.
That's
Actually.
yeah. So the point is, people don't gatekeep. Whatever
Don't
flows
gatekeep.
flows.
Don't be elitists.
Yeah.
True. Open the world to
Don't
people.
don't be elitists. Catch the music.
Okay, so we've talked about ano no, we've talked about movies going to live musicals. Pero how about the movie musicals that originated in that scene? Kung High School Musical.
Yeah. I think I really salute the producers and the filmmakers and the writers of original musical films, because there isn't a test market for them. It really doesn't have the data to back up that, oh, this is a lucrative stage musical, so it will be also be as successful on film. It doesn't have that data, so it's always a gamble, it's always a risk, because people don't know what the songs are going to be like. I mean, they can release the tracks before the film is shown, but ultimately they wouldn't know how it'll be interwoven on the story in itself. But that being said, I think it also adds an element of excitement to these films. Like, I before I watched La La Land, one of the things I really found fascinating is the music. I didn't know which part will be a musical number, or which part will be, a straight up speaking dialogues. I didn't know anything. I don't know what to anticipate for. So I think that is the exciting part of musicals that are original and written for the screen. But it may be off-putting to some people, because like, probably some people like the element of anticipation than the element of excitement. Like, for example, they're waiting for I Dreamed a Dream to come out, so when is it? Oh, okay, there it is. You don't get that on an original musical, because you literally don't know anything unless you become a nerd and research beforehand, which isn't the case for most people.
Yeah.
So
You
yeah,
don't
I
know
think
if the
that.
actress is going to start singing about her butter
Yeah.
bread. My
Yeah, so yeah, that's the exciting part of it. At the same time, it's always a gamble. It's always a gamble. Some work, some don't. Thank God La La Land worked, because it paved the way for upcoming original musicals, and I hope more original musicals will come. So yeah.
That's
True,
yeah.
true.
So you were, I remember you like mentioning that, like, I think 1960s was like the golden
Yeah.
era of that theater. What do you think is like different with how they, I mean, you answered that, like, they kind of had that whole theater influence, that the accent, what was the accent you said, the bus
Transatlantic.
Transatlantic.
Yeah.
that one. That accent.
Making tribute,
Yeah,
right?
so they had that accent, but like, do you think so you think, like, right now, are we in like a testing the waters phase, where we're trying to meet in the middle, like, with how because, like, there've been a lot of like live theater to movie adaptations, but
Yeah.
like, I mean, like, for example, like 1990s or 2004, there was like Red. They made it into the movie, and then now you got In the Heights and Cats and all that. Like, do you see? Is there like a certain trend that you see is slowly changing, or are we still in a, like, an experimental stage of it all?
I think for sure the trend that is rising is the traditional filmmaking musical without the element of romanticism. Like for example, La La Land is a great example of that because the production, the dance techniques, the singing techniques weren't perfect. Wherein, for example, Ryan Gosling wasn't a perfect dancer. You can hear Emma Stone lisp. Like not everything is perfect. It's not polished. Wherein the musicals back in the 60s and the 50s, it has to be perfect. Like that is the element of romanticism that I don't think exists today. Like today it's all about contemporary and being free and being able to breathe and allowing these characters to be regular people and not performers on screen, because ultimately that is the point of La La Land. They're just regular people falling in love, and ultimately the ending really sealed that deal, because if that film was released in the 60s, spoiler alert everybody, they will be together, but in the end they're not together, and
Yeah.
that is realism. That is realism, and I think that
Mhm.
is one key element that this century introduced to a lot of people, that it's
Being
all about
real.
realism, being
Yeah,
real,
it's
because you can't have it all in this world. So that is that is the point of La La Land. Nothing,
I think
you can't dance like Ginger Rogers and Fred Astaire if you're not Ginger Rogers and Fred Astaire. Like it's Sebastian and Mia, epitomizing regular people. So they're dancing and singing like regular people who knows how to sing, who can hit notes, but they're not polished. So
like
yeah,
operatic proper technique and all that. It's
yes,
like real raw. When you cry,
yes,
you break your voice and all that. So it's
yes.
nice.
And when you look at the production of, I think, A Lovely Night, the song
Mhm.
Lovely Night in La La Land, when you look at their technique, when you look at the way they dance, it's very lazy, but at the same time it's intentional, because they're not supposed to be traditional
Performing.
romantic performers.
Yeah.
Exactly. Yeah.
Yeah.
hmm
So
Exactly.
it's
That's
like
exactly
we're
what.
not here to impress you on my perfect 90-degree Pilates,
Yeah.
whatever. I'm
Exactly.
not here to
Exactly.
impress you with my proper diaphragmatic whatever. I'm here to
Yeah.
tell you that I'm heartbroken.
Yeah.
One
Yeah.
of our
Exactly.
listeners actually agree with you. Ayan, si Frogter Marlon, sabi niya, I think the filmmakers also want to approach these films with a realistic touch.
Yeah.
Mhm.
hmm
Especially in this generation, no, we just want things as it is.
Yeah.
Now, what
Yeah.
we
hmm
see in life is what we see in our media.
Exactly.
Ayan.
Okay, but I also think like it's really important. Like what you said, like if it was made in the '60s, they'd be together. But
They'd be
like
together.
they would
They'll
have
be
been together.
successful jazz artists and actresses, having a lot of babies, living in Hollywood. That is the 1960s version of La La Land.
But I really think like empathy is something that's like been really translated right now. You
Mhm.
know, with the trend is that I think we feel more comforted not with the escapism art. Like there's so much medium that
Mhm.
can be escapism, but there's also
Mhm.
medium that can feel for you. Like maybe
Mhm.
you'd watch La La Land and you'd be like, oh my god, I also had a heartbreak. You know, so it's kind of in a way it's
It's
therapeutic.
cathartic. It's cathartic.
Cathartic.
Like the tragedy of them not being able to get back together despite their
Mhm.
successes is something that is tragic, but at the same time relatable, because you can't have it all, and that's how the
True.
world works. Yeah.
And I
Got it.
think talagang nag-boom si La La Land just because of, you know, being the realistic movie that it is.
Yes. Exactly. Exactly.
So like putting this into context with let's say the Philippines.
hmm
Mm-mm.
In the local movie industry in the Philippines, you know, 'cause like I think we're starting. I mean, Filipinos are like known to be like, oh my god, or X Factor or like
Yeah.
singer, or like you just
Boy.
go from the random sari sari store and then the ate is belting I will always love you. Do
Oh yeah.
you do you think in the local movie industry here in the Philippines, do you think we'll have that certain trend or rise? Because like all of this is so far has been like Euro specific. So
hmm
do you think that
Mm-mm.
you think
I think right now in the Philippine cinema, I think Filipinos really have the hunger for quality films, regardless of the genre. I think there's a lot of. I think there was a phase just recently that Filipinos are being very critical about the recent films that's emerging in the Philippine cinema, how they're very poor in quality and not enough great storytelling, just all about the box office and cheap laughs. I think there's a movement right now that people are really craving for quality films. However, quality films usually come from independent filmmakers because we can't expect quality films from studios that we have right now, especially the big
Mm-hmm.
studios, because ultimately they're after for box
The
office,
profit.
the
Mm-hmm.
profits, and which is understandable because show business is business, especially right now we're in a pandemic. Like a lot of cinemas aren't doing well, studios are losing money, so ultimately they want their profit to come back. So that being said, it's very hard to produce a musical when you're an independent filmmaker because it needs money to make a musical, with the production design, the set design, with producing this big elaborate songs. You need money to make a musical. That's it, period. And I don't think it's possible with just the independent scene. And I don't think right now, at least right now, I'm not ruling it out for sure, but I don't think it's possible for independent filmmakers to make musicals that's very elaborate and very big, that'll
Mm-hmm.
compete in a global stage. No, unfortunately, especially that we've hit the pandemic. And I don't I don't even remember the last film, the last original Filipino film that was released in theaters. So I think right now we're back from scratch. I think the
Mm-hmm.
goal is to get Filipinos back to appreciate Filipino films. Not regardless of the genre. I think musicals will be I think it'll come its time in the future, but right now I don't think anytime soon.
God,
Mhm.
yeah, got it. So,
So
but like right
nice.
now, because in the local theater scene, because like theater is slowly coming back, and we do have like the, our, let's say, Rock of Ages or a Game of Trolls or let's say Mula sa Buwan. Do you do you think it would be a good idea to like put these things into like open the
A
book into a
movie.
Pandora
Yeah.
box, like hey, box office, do you want to make this into a film?
I think
Mm-hmm.
I think it depends. Uh, I can speak on not just strictly on the Philippine cinema, but like globally. I think there's a struggle in terms of theatrical releases. I think the opportunity is to really seize the possibilities of what streaming can do. For example, the reason why In the Heights really failed badly, even though it's meant to be a box office success, it was released in the summer in the United States. It's meant to be a big hit, but it wasn't because it was released theatrically. Whereas when you think about films like Tick Tick Boom, which, if you really think about it, it's an obscure film that nobody really knows about, other than people who are really knowledgeable with musicals as a whole. Like nobody really knows about the story of Jonathan Larson and how he wrote Rent through the story of Tick Tick Boom.
Yeah.
But it was a big hit because it was on Netflix. And
Mm-hmm.
Mm-hmm.
it's all about the distribution. It's all about the distributor. And Netflix really knows what they're doing. They really campaign it hard. And In the Heights is more popular than Tick Tick Boom for sure. Like it's more well known, but Tick
Mm-hmm.
Tick Boom did really like exponentially better than In the Heights because it's on streaming. Even West Side Story really did poorly because it was released theatrically on the same period as Spider-Man. And there's a lot of
Mm-hmm.
competition, there's a lot of there's a lot of films competing for that date, but ultimately, when it was released in HBO Max, it picked up its pace. There's a lot of people who decided to watch it because it's on HBO Max. And going back to what you said with Philippine cinema, with films like with musicals like Rock of Ages being adapted possibly on film, I think they should really look for a distributor in streaming platforms. For theatrical releases, it's probably bound to fail for now. It's not a smart idea. I think it's really time to exhaust the possibilities of streaming, for now at
Mm-hmm.
least.
for streaming. So you see, I think there really is a trend, especially now with COVID, and everyone just has
Mm-hmm.
to work on their own time. I think the future of film, no, literally the future of like film and musicals and all that um can depend
Like,
partly on streaming. I think, right?
mm-hmm.
Yes, yes, and movie tickets are expensive, unfortunately. And I think right now with the business model that Hollywood is creating for theatrical releases, I think with from an economic standpoint, I think since these movie tickets are so expensive, especially with the second Great Depression that we're in right now, I think most people would rather spend that amount for an event like Spider-Man, like
Mm-hmm.
for a very big comic book movie that's a lot. There's a lot of explosion, a lot of visual effects that would really become an experience. Unfortunately, not all musicals can be considered as an experience for most people.
Mhm.
Whereas it's like when you talk about like Spider-Man or Avengers or these Marvel films, it the audience is broader. It's more universal. Whereas musicals can tend to be directly focused on a particular type of consumer. So yeah.
Mm-hmm.
Mhm.
Just there, I think it just really depends. Like if you're gonna if you're serving pizza, not everyone loves pizza, so it just
Yeah. You just
it
have
just
Or
really
to,
depends on the
it depends on
consumer
the flavor. It depends on the flavor of the pizza. So
flavor.
I'm not going to give Chicago pizza to like New Yorkers naman. So parang,
exactly,
you know,
exactly. Some like pineapple, some don't.
mm,
So yeah.
But pineapple.
ayan. Little segue lang to all our viewers, to all our listeners. If you guys have any comments or have any questions for Sir Dennis, you can just drop them in the comments so we can ask them.
We got Jason's question. Do you think
Yeah.
introduction of musicals in movie formats like Hamilton, Dear Evan Hansen, Cats allow more traction, therefore a lot more people getting to know the world of musicals? Yeah, I think we covered that a while ago, no?
Yeah.
Let's get oh yeah, Rocky Horror Picture. Yeah, what are your opinions on that? So I think we have the liberty of the time to explore. What do you think of Rocky Horror?
Which Rocky Horror?
Like Rocky Horror Picture when it was turned into like a movie musical. And Dear Evan Hansen. Oh, let's do both of
Oh
those.
yeah, 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 yeah.
Rocky Rocky Horror, when it was turned into a musical, I think it was okay. I think it definitely was of the time. It was very edgy. It was
Mhm.
a departure from the traditional filmmaking musicals back in the 60s. It paved the way for edgier musicals. I think the adaptation of Rocky Horror paved the way for Chicago. That not all musicals have to be this nanny taking care of children, like Mary Poppins or Sound of Music. Like there's an edgier audience for musicals, and I think that's what Rocky Horror Picture Show did. With Dear Evan Hansen, I think that's a great example of you need it. It has to be good, otherwise it'll just disdain the legacy that it had. Um, Personally, I don't think Dear Evan Hansen was that bad. Compared to the rep, I mean, when you look at the reputation that it's getting, like a lot of people are treating it as the worst film of the year. I don't think so. I think it has a lot of redeeming factors. Ben Platt aside, I think the performances were great. Amy Adams was
Mhm.
great. Julianne Moore was great, although I think she was a miscast. Um, Caitlin Dever was great. Everything was great except for Ben Platt. And I think my only concern with Dear Evan Hansen is the editing. I really didn't like the editing of the film, but can it be better for sure? But at the same time, it's so easy to hate on something when it's not as good as what people are anticipating it to be. And
Mhm.
when you get on that hate train, it's unstoppable. And I think Dear
Yeah.
Evan Hansen was a victim of that. Like when the hatred starts, it's just viral, it's just infectious. And yeah, that's what happened with Dear Evan Hansen. And unfortunately, it kind of disdained its reputation, and it was very unfortunate because that was supposed to be Ben Platt's gateway towards EGOT. Unfortunately, it didn't
Oh.
happen. It was the opposite of that.
Ega.
So, yeah. Mhm.
I mean, speaking of Dear Evan Hansen and EGOT, what about Lady Gaga? And the,
Oh.
In A Star Is
'cause
Born,
I mean,
or Lady
huh?
Gaga as a person.
Lady
What
Gaga
about
as
her?
a person, 'cause she's been doing a lot.
Mhm.
She's been being she's booked. So like let's say um A Star Is Born. How would you say her performance is like?
I like The Star Is Born. I think A Star Is Born is it's a very direction-driven film that really benefited the actors. I think Bradley Cooper's direction was the star in A Star Is Born. I think it was all about his vision, how he created that world, how he related the episodes of alcoholism from someone who is down to his luck, from to the Cinderella story of an unknown person becoming a star, to the very last frame of that film. Everything was just very well thought out in A Star Is Born. Lady Gaga was good. She was good. I don't think she was the best part of the film. I think Bradley Cooper really was the star, both in
Mhm,
acting and directing.
mhm.
I think the unsung hero of A Star Is Born really is Bradley Cooper, because the attention went to Lady Gaga because, oh, this is her first big leading role that's meant to get her a lot of awards. But she was good. She was good. But um there's a lot of scenes in A Star Is Born where it feels like she's acting. Um
Or like
there's a lot
acting.
acting. Like there's a lot of scenes where she's crying, but her eyes don't say anything. Like there are tears,
Mm,
you can see the tears visible, but there's nothing behind the eyes. I don't know. That's me just being
yeah.
nitty gritty, but she's good.
Mm.
She's good. Worthy of a
I do
nom.
remember because like I think I was watching this interview of Emily. Oh, I call her Emily. What's the name of? She's from in Devil Wears Prada.
Emily Blunt
Emily Blunt. Yeah, Emily. The Emily that deserves to be in
in
Paris.
Paris.
I remember like she mentioned in her interview about her way of acting is that in real life we're all like kind of pretending. We're all really like not showing. So if we're crying, it's not like, oh, look at me cry. It's kind of the approach is like it's like you're trying to stop it, but it just can't. And I think that's kind of the nitpicky part about the A Star Is Born that I
Yeah,
and that.
yeah, and I think it also depends on the tone. Like when when you talk about crying, it depends on the tone. When a film is campy, like you can bawl your eyes out, but when a film
Um,
is gritty and it's more subtle and it's more about the underpinnings of human emotions, then the layers of your emotions should come out without you bawling your eyes out. If that makes sense. Like we
Yeah.
don't need to see you cry all the time for us to know that you're suffering on the inside. Like it has to come out as an energy from you. So I think that's what I missed in Lady Gaga's acting. But then again, the little monsters will kill me. She's good. She's good, guys. Okay,
that's not
it's a
even
good
like
It's a good performance, worthy of
okay.
a
Compare it to
nomination.
like let's compare it to yeah. This is where the wine where the wine needs to kick in. Let's say Dear Evan Hansen, because I think
Mhm.
the luxury another luxury or another like disadvantage or luxury of live musicals I think is there you can get away with with being in the role of a 15 or 17-year-old when you're 30 or 35.
Yeah,
But
because
when you
you're
do that on film,
royalty.
you can't really do that. And I do remember there was like that whole controversy of like this is a
Yeah,
high schooler.
it was a thing. My thing with that is it used to be normal. When you think about films like The Breakfast Club, these actors are all in their late 20s, almost 30s, playing teenagers. When you think
Yeah,
about Mean Girls, Rachel McAdams, I think, was already 28
Yeah,
when
yeah,
yeah.
she played Regina George, and she was only like 4 years younger than Amy Poehler, which played her mother in Mean Girls. So that used to be normal. That used to be
yeah.
normal, and that used to be tolerable. Unfortunately, we're at the time right now that everything has to be perfect in terms of casting because it's the rise of people's social consciousness. Like it has to be like more people are woke in a very positive sense because older people playing teenagers can come across as a misrepresentation of their age, which can be, for example, when I'm a teenager and I'm watching someone older playing a teenager, it'll be instilled into me that I need to chase something that isn't possible. Like I can't be that person because that person in real life is already 28. So I
Yeah.
can't achieve that type of physicality, that type of
Yeah.
nuances, that type of whatever. I can't achieve that because I'm just 17 and that actor in real life is 28. So I think that is the negative side of those people casted being casted in younger
Mhm.
roles.
Mhm.
um but at the same time, I think I personally I'm not too precious on that. For as long as again, for as long as the actor is right for the part, he has the skills, he looks at 17. I mean, Rachel McAdams
Yeah.
looks like a high school student in Mean Girls.
Yeah, she does. She does.
I
I was
really don't
thinking
care.
about that.
I really don't
Yeah.
care about if she's
Yeah.
28 because ultimately that's a little ageist. But
Mhm.
yeah,
Yeah.
unfortunately right now
You,
people
you
are
could like
so
be 50 years
nitty
old in
gritty.
real life, but if you look like you're 18, it's fine.
Yeah, it's fine. But yeah, with their Evan Hansen, I think it's very visible that Ben
Mhm.
Platt doesn't look
It's,
like 17 anymore.
Mhm.
yeah.
And it was only aggravated by the digital de aging that happened that I don't think was very successful. So it
Yeah.
Mhm.
became very cartoonish. And it was
Mhm.
almost like a 20, how old is Ben Platt? 28, 29? Let's say he's 29. It's
Yeah.
Yeah.
almost like a 29-year-old's version of a teenager, which is ultimately, in the film, it came across as funny, like the way he run the hallway whenever he feels uncomfortable. It's not natural anymore. It's not natural anymore to say the least. So yeah,
Yeah, I think that's the thing also with like when you have because when you're on stage, people see like the silhouette of you. They don't actually see like the whole wrinkles and
yeah,
film like everyone can see your pores.
yeah. And on stage,
Actually.
like you have the liberty to act big, to act, like to act like a theater actor. Like yeah, you need to
The
act big.
theater.
So
Mhm.
everything is amplified. We're in on film, like when the language of film is that the nothingness is everything. You need to act as if there's nothing. Like you
Mhm.
need to act like on a 0 degree in order for the camera to pick up the lightning in a bottle. So like I don't think Ben Platt did that because he did too much because he was trying to overcompensate the fact that he is no longer a 17-year-old. So yeah.
Yeah.
Sorry, Ben
Yeah.
Platt. So
Sorry,
you'll be fine.
we'll give you retinols to, but yeah, no, we do love Ben Platt. He's hella talented. Just I don't think it
Actually.
really translated well on film. Marlon mentioned about Riverdale teenagers.
Riverdale, yeah.
Riverdale teenagers.
What are your thoughts on that? They have random musical numbers.
Oh, yeah, yeah,
On Riverdale?
yeah.
Yeah.
Or any TV series like actually Grey's Anatomy has a musical episode.
I
Yeah.
don't think I'm. I don't think I've seen a series that has a random musical number yet. I haven't. I stopped watching Riverdale many years ago because I can't. I just can't.
Mm,
So I don't think
After
I've
the first
encountered.
season, they said the plot. They said whatever.
they're just teenagers. Yeah.
But I'll try to watch it for you guys, and
Mhm.
I'll get back to
Oh, I
you.
don't watch it. I just watch the spoiler reviews, so I don't have to.
You should make a review about that.
Oh no.
compile them.
Okay. Okay.
Okay. Anyway, I think I think there's the whole pros and cons that there's like a large advantage of streaming right now.
Mhm.
That I mean when something is streamed like Tick Tick Boom or something, it just really skyrockets something. So
Yeah.
I think everyone's really just studying how or what sells at this point.
Mhm. And the accessibility of streaming too. Like you can literally play it in your home, in the comfort of your home,
Yeah.
right? And you don't
Yeah.
have to go to the theater, spend so much. So yeah,
True.
Mhm.
You can play it
That's
again and again. That's the
exactly. Yeah. Hmm.
Okay, thank you so much, Dennis. This was like super insightful and like things that
informative.
I didn't like realize like about how the 1960s, like why the musicals were like such a
Hmm.
peak then. So
Yeah.
it's good. It's a good thing to like reflect on, and it's actually really useful, especially if we have like listeners who are also like
Hmm.
budding filmmakers or like actors who are also transitioning back and forth with
Hmm.
that. I do have a last question
Mm.
before we end.
Okay.
Um, because like for our listeners out there, like we all were doing like theater acting, so
Yeah.
we're all theater actors in that point. If you were cast in a what movie musical would
Movie.
that be and why?
Yeah.
Um, I have a very
Go.
solid answer for this one for two very different reasons. Number one, I would really love for Miss Saigon to be adapted on film. It hasn't happened before. Number
Mm-mm.
two, I think it would give good representation for Asian actors.
Mm-mm.
Because Miss Saigon is obviously predominantly Asian. There are American actors, but most of these will be they will utilize Asian talents. So I think that will be great for Asian theater actors in particular. And yeah, I just really love Thoy. I mean, I played Thoy 10 years
Mm-mm.
ago and on Miss Saigon, and it's a very intense character, but I think he's still in me deep inside. So I would yeah, it's
Yeah.
something
So
that I would love to play.
so
So
he's
yeah.
still in you.
Ah,
Yeah,
the power.
that's awesome. Okay. So thank you so much,
Thank
Dennis, for
you.
You're
having
welcome,
us.
guys.
Thank
Thanks for
you.
having me.
Do you have anything that you'd like to plug? Any socials or events to come?
Yeah, I have a Facebook page and a YouTube channel. My Facebook page and YouTube channel is called Playbuck. I also have Letterbox and Twitter is called Playbuck_PH. And yeah, I do a lot of movie updates, film reviews, Oscar talk, and all that. I do collaborate with a lot of people who are better than me in terms of talking about the Oscars. So yeah, it's always like a podcast style, just like what you guys are doing in my YouTube channel.
Mhm.
So yeah, check it out.
All
Yeah,
right.
go
Thank
follow
you.
him,
Thank you so
guys.
much. Go follow him, guys, and don't forget to also like Archimix's page and
Yeah.
all our other socials, and everything else is gonna be down there. So
Yeah. Just
yeah.
go to those sites. Just search Orthomex, you'll be there.
Yeah, and so for our next episode on April 30, we're going to be featuring Ateneo's
A
rep.
really special.
Yeah, so there we go. It's a for their show First Date, and we're going to be talking to some of the cast, and yeah, hopefully you guys watch that. It's gonna be exciting. It's gonna be a whole new other like like just entering COVID and how everything is done now and how productions are going to be made. So hopefully everyone watches
Especially
that. Yeah,
college
yeah,
production.
the
Taking in
college crowd. The
another.
crowd we were in 10 years ago, 5 years ago. I think 10 is the youngest one
Yeah,
from here.
I'm the youngest here.
What? Sorry.
I'm the youngest.
She,
Like I think
she's the youngest. She just called us old.
3. Huh?
Well, wala na ako sa kalendaryo. That's all I can say.
Okay, thank you so much, Dennis.
Thank you,
Thank
You're
you,
welcome,
thank
guys.
everyone.
Thank you for having me.
Yeah, thank you. Good night,
you.
everyone. Thank you so
Good
much
night,
for
everyone.
streaming. Bye bye.
Bye. Bye, everyone.